Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Norel Doan, and I'm the Director of Marketing at Viking Pure Solutions. We are so excited to host this event in honor of Earth Day today, and we've got some amazing speakers lined up sharing their expertise on how facilities in a wide range of industries can reduce their environmental impact and make their buildings healthier and more comfortable places to be. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you all to Jason. He is our moderator for today's panel. Jason has over 25 years of experience in corporate facilities management, real estate, and project management with an emphasis on facilities operations. Jason has been a member of IFMA since 2002, and he serves on the IFMA Global Board of Directors and is Vice Chair for the IFMA Federal Government Affairs Committee. Jason, take it away.
Thank you, Norel, for that great introduction. Certainly a pleasure being with you today, talking about facility management and sustainability and how it all works together in the built environment. And we have a great crew with us today talking about sustainability in a lot of different arenas and subject matter experts, and certainly looking forward to hearing all the great content being shared by these subject matter experts. I want to go ahead and just remind everybody, like Norel shared, please use that chat feature on the right-hand side of the screen to ask questions as we go through today's panel discussion, and we will do our best to answer those accordingly. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce our panelists for today. First up is Daniel Lawson. Daniel is a co-founder and the president of business affairs at Viking Pure Solutions, a company that's challenging what it means to clean and disinfect safely, sustainably, and effectively. Daniel, welcome to the panel discussion. Thank you for being with us today. Next up is Christian Weeks. Christian is CEO of Inverid Systems. He's a climate tech entrepreneur and sustainable building expert. Christian, thank you for joining us as well. Annie Hancock. Annie is the Director of Partnerships and Customer Success at Green Seal, a global nonprofit organization and leading eco-label with a mission to transform the economy for a healthy, greener world. Annie, thank you for joining us as well. Lisa Stanley, she's based out of Colorado. She is a director on the technical solutions team at the U.S. Green Building Council, or the USGBC. Lisa, thank you for joining us today. Rafael Carte. Rafael is a professor at NYU Stern Business School, teaching about commercializing disruptive technology, including smart buildings and smart cities. Prior to being at NYU, Rafael was co-founder of a startup applying machine learning technology to increase energy efficiency and sustainability in commercial facilities. Rafael, thank you for joining us as well. And rounding us off is Daryl Boyce. Daryl is a fellow life member of ASHRAE. ASHRAE is the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, and he has served as president for 2019 and the 2020 term. Throughout his time spent in ASHRAE and in facility management industry, Daryl has worked on various projects to increase facility energy efficiency in the built environment as well. Thank you all for joining us. It's certainly a pleasure to be moderating a wonderful panel of industry experts, and certainly look forward to hearing all the great responses based upon our questions. So with that, if we have no other questions to start, we're going to go ahead and kick it off today. And the first question comes to you, Lisa. So from your perspective, what are the different areas in the built environment where facility managers can reduce environmental impact and improve sustainability?
Thank you. Happy to kick things off and be here. I think our entire LEED scorecard really answers this question. We address all the different areas of sustainability, from energy and atmosphere to water to site to location to materials. As a previous property manager, though, I really do have two key areas that I think we're going to hear a lot about today. One high priority is really how do we reduce those greenhouse gas emissions, which in tandem usually are also helping us save money. So that's always helpful when we're hitting two things at one time. My kind of hot button is really, are you doing that ongoing commissioning of your building systems? Simple things happen all the time as it relates to helping our occupants be comfortable. Did we shut an outside air damper manually, and did it get overridden or something like that? Not only is that bad for our systems as it relates to efficiency, but it's also not good for our indoor air quality. So as it relates to those systems, keep them commissioned, upgrade as you can. Really, what are your options to investigate switching to all electric systems or installing backup systems that are electric? How can we do that in a smart way? Uh, and how do we, and you'll hear about this again today a lot because it is so important, our air quality. Um, not only is it with bringing in enough fresh air, but what materials are we installing when we're doing a tenant fit out? Most of you guys are doing renovations on a regular basis, or you're adding a tenant. Are you using green cleaning and green construction? All of those things make a big difference to your air quality. And I'll talk a little bit more about it later, just how simple you can keep things as it relates to checking that air quality. You can use a handheld sensor to check your CO2 levels and TVOC levels on a regular basis. So those are a couple of things that I would highlight as it relates to different ways to reduce that environmental impact and improve sustainability as a facility manager. So thank you for letting me kick things off. It's good to be here.
Oh, great, great response, Lisa. Thank you so much. Raphael, how about you? Can you go ahead and respond to that question as well?
Sure. Yes, thanks so much. I want to piggyback on Lisa. In my teaching around sustainability, I look at sort of energy use and carbon as well as water and waste. And then I'm focusing on energy use and carbon. I think one thing that approach I often take is that there's a lot that can be done even beyond some of those big items, those big CapEx things, the new boiler and the new chiller. And in my own experience, doing a smart building company, we found so many opportunities in O&M, basically to increase efficiency, going well beyond sort of the punch list of things to fix. Taking a data-driven approach, especially opportunities in terms of optimizing HVAC, as well as optimizing lighting. We were able to achieve 30 to 35 HVAC cost and energy reductions without affecting comfort. So the opportunities there are great, as well as using data for demand management, decreasing peak load, which helps prevent bringing in those dirty peaker load plants on. And also in O&M, there's opportunities with simple things like cool roofs that cost nothing and reduce thermal load. But sort of moving on to sort of the CapEx, there's so many quick hits around things like LED replacement, as well as envelope things to improve efficiency, and then going to some of the bigger items in terms of solar and wind where possible, coupled with storage, as well as things like heat pumps to decarbonize the facility, as Lisa alluded to earlier. And then looking at some things like, microgrids for the campus, renewables to charge EVs, electrochromic windows that can darken with sunlight to produce shading, and embedded photovoltaic. All of these technologies are available today and ready to scale. So there's such a diversity of technologies out there. There's the opportunity to really go beyond some of the usual suspects to affect sustainability powerfully in buildings.
Yeah, great response, Robbie. I think we could do a full panel discussion just having you present all those ideas that you just shared with us all. So great content on that, and thank you so much for that response.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. How about you, Christian? What's your thoughts on that question?
Thanks, Jason. Nice to be here. Well, I'm going to double click on some things that have been mentioned, but specifically around HVAC and indoor air quality, because at Inverid, our whole mission is how do we align those two? How do we deliver better air quality, but do it more energy efficiently as well? And that's all tied into how we look at HVAC and specifically, and or generally in ventilation in particular. So big picture, though, if you look at commercial buildings in the U.S., about 36% of energy consumption or energy use in commercial buildings is around HVAC. And so, whether you're doing a capital project or you're not doing a capital project, there's opportunities. It starts with, as we've heard already, I think just making sure those systems are properly maintained and serviced. Make sure those dampers aren't stuck. Make sure that it's, the systems are running when they need to, the way they need to be running. The filters are being replaced when they need to be replaced. But I think beyond that, as Raphael said, then adding a control layer, making sure you have controls in place so that you can then optimize how these systems are used. One example that hasn't been mentioned yet around sort of HVAC controls around demand control ventilation is a great way to adjust how the system is being run based on occupancy, what's happening in the space. So we're not overventilating spaces when they're underoccupied, for example. But the last piece I would say is when you're looking at making an upgrade to your system or perhaps installing new systems, there are a number of technologies that can be incorporated into those systems. And I'll talk a little more about this later, but some examples to mention briefly now are air clean technologies that allow you to optimize your ventilation rates and still deliver the code required or even better indoor air quality targets. But there's also technologies like energy recovery systems that can make that ventilation energy use more efficient. So those are a couple areas, again, specifically on HVAC that I think are worth focusing on given the large contribution to overall energy use and overall load in a building that HVAC represents.
Yeah, I think we all could probably say the biggest factor is being able to monitor everything and making sure we're all doing the right thing, on a consistent basis. Without monitoring, it's almost pointless. So
can't manage what you don't measure, right, Jason?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to punt over to Daryl from Ashray. Daryl, you want to build a little bit further on that question?
Yeah, I think some of the key elements have been mentioned, and I'd just like to remind everybody that we really build these buildings. The majority of them are for people to work, live, and play. So even though the ventilation systems are a high energy use, they're a necessary thing for life support within the built environment. So it's about doing smart things with the ventilation systems. It's about making sure that they have adequate or good ventilation, outdoor air, but in a manner that doesn't waste energy. In my year as president of ASHRAE, the theme was building for people and performance. It's all about creating great environments for the people without wasting energy while you're doing it. So those one key element, of course, is the ventilation system. And it's also been mentioned that the lighting, I mean, it's in the old days, going to LED lights was expensive. Now it's quite cost effective, so you can reduce energy efficiency quite a bit with lighting retrofits. And there is some good value in the envelope from 2 points. One is that if you can actually improve the envelope, it often improves the indoor environmental quality. But the sort of big investments in envelope upgrades are very difficult to fund. But there's many smaller investments that you can do that will reduce infiltration and really improve both energy efficiency and the indoor environment. It's interesting that ASHRAE became very noted in the 70s when they created the guidelines and standards for ventilation rates to reduce energy waste. And now we're gearing up for decarbonization, effective decarbonization of the built environment. So there's a lot of things going on that we're looking at. That how does the indoor air quality and the decarbonization or energy efficiency come together in an effective manner? I think the pandemic really taught us a lot about indoor environmental quality, and so we're trying to make sure we learn from that and create the recommendations and guidelines that really affect both give a good environment and reduce the energy and carbon use. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Certainly do appreciate some insight coming from the resident experts on HVAC. So thank you for that. Amy, can you take a few minutes to respond as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jason, and good to be here with everybody. And for those folks who don't know me, I'm with Green Seal, and for those that do know us, we're very commonly known in the cleaning and product and service certification space. So where I'm coming from, first I want to take a step back. I think, Jason, right, part of the question is just what are the different areas that we can focus on, and everything that Lisa, Raphael, Christian, Daryl have talked about already is spot on. The thing I like to think about is, just what's coming in and out of a building that a facility manager can control, right? A lot of this is just what is in our control. So everything that everybody already mentioned is 100% true. And I think the other piece too is a lot of what Green Seal focuses on, obviously it is sustainability, but it is also health, as Jill mentioned, right? These buildings are for people to occupy or students, right, if it's a school. And so thinking about everything that comes in and out of building, and as humans, we are part of the environment. And so making sure we can make these buildings and these indoor spaces just as healthy and positive as possible, right? So that does include products. So, I think we mentioned cleaning products are a big part of what is coming in and out and is kind of on surfaces inside a building, but also how those products are used. So whether it's cleaning staff, just making sure that folks are trained and have proper guidance, standard operating procedures on how best to care for a building, because we know that one, outside of just having better cleaning products and those chemicals, which also influences the indoor air quality of a building, as well as the workers that are using those products, it's important that they know how to use them, right? All of this, if we use excess product or, even equipment too, not just cleaning chemicals, but equipment, if we're not using those properly, we're going to waste energy. So all of those things from a training standpoint of staff and the people that care for a building is also kind of feels like a softer piece of it, but it is super critical in order for everything that everybody's already mentioned to happen in an efficient and effective manner, right? So that we can reduce the energy component. And like other folks already mentioned too, HVAC, indoor air quality, just monitoring, right? A data-driven approach. We can't figure out what our starting point is to be able to figure out what are those small steps to continue to improve. Just to improve the indoor air quality in the space for all of the people. So I think the other piece that's a softer piece that I do think is really important that is something Greensill talks about too, is the communication side of things. So if you are taking the time and space to use better products, non-conventional cleaning products, have good SOPs and policies and procedures to help care for that building, also communicating that and engaging with the occupants of a building so they understand what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I think then it also builds this engagement and support of what you're doing so that you can do more of it. And all of those things really are critical. And, some of that is on the softer side, but it's fundamental to allow us to really make the impact that we want across all of the different avenues that everybody mentioned.
Yeah, that's all some great responses there, and certainly do appreciate that, Annie. Thank you again for joining us. I think that key word we're all going to be saying more than anything is just that monitoring factor from all components, and something that's very, very important. Daniel, last but not least on this question, happy to respond or repeat that again real quick. What are the different areas from your perspective of the built environment where facility managers can reduce the environmental impact and improve sustainability altogether?
Yeah, thanks for the question, and thanks for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to share space with everyone, and an honor. I kind of look at this question in twofold. I look at it from more like tangible, responses, which I think everybody's, certainly shared, some excellent feedback and areas that I wasn't even aware of before we kind of came into this conversation. And then some more intangible, perspectives from like an intangible one. I think an area is, quite frankly, finding those that are, willing and, enthusiastic about having the conversation, about what, sustainability, actually means, for their facility, sharing a lot of these, performance metrics that many of you spoken to, and the long-term as well as short-term cost-saving benefits, and outcomes, that one can expect from, a transition into a more sustainable approach for their building. And then, one thing that I look at from more of a tangible, opportunity is kind of looking at, a more traditional supply chain and how the supply chain, affects our buildings, how our standard ordering and, storage of product, within our facilities, affects our community, affects our environment, affects our building, as a whole. On the back end of supply chain, the waste that's created, how waste is managed, is handled, and properly disposed of as well. So I think, facilities, can really stand to research and look at, sustainability more from like an autonomous perspective and ways that they can invest in technologies that can, essentially prepare, their facilities for, for their day to day, without, drastically, impacting or increasing, the need for, more trucks, more people, and certainly more waste, coming out of the back end of our building.
Yeah, I certainly do agree with that. And I think thing that you hit on there that, we haven't said out loud is just the monitoring of the circular economy from a sustainability perspective of things, and how important it is to really recognize that on a day-to-day basis, regardless of what it is that we're focusing on. So great response on that. Thank you, Daniel. Just want to pause here for a second in our chat window here for our audience. Can you share where you're calling in from around, whether it's here in the U.S. or around the borders around the world? Let's just pause for a few seconds here. If you could share where you're dialing in from, would be great to give our presenters a little bit of a breather. Take a drink if you need to. But anyone want to share? Kristen's calling in from Pennsylvania. Thank you, Kristen. Anyone else want to share? Lots of East Coast. Thank you, Megan and Keith, for being with us today. Another New York. Thank you, Peter. Boston. Nice. Thank you. Got some West Coast here finally. Thank you, Jessica, from calling in. A little early in the morning for you guys out there. Mark in Pennsylvania. Thank you. Got Josh from New York as well. Thank you for calling in. Well, thanks for that response, everyone. Certainly appreciate taking time out. If you have any questions, feel free to put that in your chat so that we all can respond accordingly and provide as much educational information about sustainability as possible. So going to question number 2 for the group here. Why should FMs prioritize sustainable systems, products, and processes in their facilities? I'm going to say it from a people, planet, profit perspective. Christian, can you go ahead and respond to that for us? You're on mute.
Sure. Happy to kick it off. And I could speak to all 3, but maybe I'll take one and we can let it bounce around a little bit with the others too. And maybe I'll start with at the top here with people. And I'll be brief, but as many of you have probably seen, and I think this was highlighted a lot during the pandemic, we spent a lot of time indoors. Joe Allen from Harvard likes to mention that people spend about 80% of their time indoors. And I saw another study recently that said about 60% of our time at work. So whether we're at home or whether we're at work, we're oftentimes indoors. And so the air we breathe has an outsized impact on our overall health. So the other thing that people may not be aware of, the EPA and others have pointed out that indoor air is anywhere from 2 to 5 times more polluted than outside air. And so we're spending all this time indoors and we're breathing air that isn't as fresh, unfortunately, as that outside air often is. And studies, not surprisingly, perhaps have shown that when we have better indoor air quality, it improves productivity for workers, and it also improves test scores for students. So those are some of the reasons why making sure we're managing our systems, maintaining our systems appropriately can have a positive benefit on the people who occupy these spaces.
Great, Christian. Thank you for that response. Raphael, how about you?
Sure. Thanks. I'm just going to, when I started in this business more than 10 years ago, the focus was almost completely onto the cost part of profits. And I'm so glad to sort of echo what Christian said, the shift now from just looking at 30-some% operating cost reductions to really focusing on people in terms of health, in terms of the health benefits that Christian mentioned, as well as workforce retention. And happiness and attracting younger workers. Sustainable facilities are an important part of really maintaining a workforce that's motivated and productive, as Christian said, and healthy. Also, I just think it's great as well that as corporate goals around sustainability and net zero have come down, that's really moved the needle away from just looking at cost reductions to really looking at the carbon footprint and what buildings contribute, both through their construction, but more importantly, through their use. So I think, facility managers have a broader set of goals to optimize, but that's good for the business, that's good for the people using those buildings, and is good for society.
Yeah, I certainly couldn't agree more. So thank you for that response. Lisa, from the USGBC side of things, how would you respond to that?
Gosh, absolutely all of the above. What I love about what we're talking about and what I get to focus on all day, every day is that this is about that triple bottom line, that people, planet, profit. And I love that really we get to make these decisions. It's easy to help make these decisions when we've got like one brush stroke that hits all of those key areas. And I think the why really is because because you have control, because you have power. As someone that's in charge of a building and a facility, you guys have the ability to help make those right decisions, to help educate your owner, to help educate the person in charge. And I love what Annie said about really making sure that the people in your buildings know what you're doing, because that does make a big difference. You know, we do have a more sophisticated audience than we did 10, 15 years ago. You know, it used to be we would just respond to the complaint, right? Oh my God, what's the horrible smell? And you know you're doing construction on the 10th floor and they can smell it down on the 2nd floor. We know that's not crazy anymore, right? Like that was some bad VOCs in that paint or in that sealant. So first of all, make sure your construction isn't using that or your green cleaning materials are there. And second of all, yeah, shout it from the rooftops, you know, help your people be happy. Again, why should we do it? Because we can, and it really is the right thing. It's not only helping your life easier day to day, but it's helping at that corporate responsibility level. It's on Wall Street, you know, they're measuring it, they care. This turns into dollars. So it's an exciting time to be in facilities management. It's not just about the grind anymore. You guys really can make a difference, which is why I jumped ship and get to focus on this full time. But it's fun to weave that into your day to day. You know, again, why, and just another simple thing, right? We haven't really talked about the outside of your buildings. Water is important. How can you start to think about reducing how much water is used at your site? Hopefully you've done everything you can inside to change to low flow fixtures. But how about that landscaping? You know, across the country, it's one of the areas where I still see a lot of unnecessary water being used. How can you start to move to a little bit more xeriscape? Maybe it's in your budget each year. You're just doing a little bit more, you know. Again, you've got power, you've got control. So that's your why. And I'll pass it back.
So 2 quick questions, a little bit off cuff for you from a USGBC side of things and talking about buildings and LEED and accreditations. Is there a conversation about controlling off gassing during the construction process when the building's occupied?
Yeah, absolutely. Like off gassing of the materials being installed and
Yes.
that type of thing.
And from
Yeah.
a sustainability component of, what are we trying to
Yeah.
create opportunities around?
You know, I think the ideal is that, you know, you are choosing materials that aren't doing that off gassing. You know, you really can work to select and choose products that are healthier from day one. So you're not going to off gas, right? That's out there. It's real. We saw that in our green cleaning and how critical it was. And I hope everybody on this call is using those third-party verified green seal products. The same can happen with your construction. And, you know, there are other ways to help protect while you're doing it in an occupied building, controlling the airflow. You may still have the dust or whatever, or maybe you do have something where you've got the doors that need that special seal. Work with your contractors, have them do it at their site and bring those things in. But the most important thing is to try to really leverage, and you can look to the LEED rating system. Our new construction rating system is very specific and prescriptive to give you the tools to give your contractors and your architects what they need to specify. So you can nip that one in the bud.
Right. All goes back to that circular economy perspective
Yeah.
of sustainability. So thank you so much for that, Lisa. Annie, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I think that the why is pretty simple, right? I think as people, we all care about other people. That's kind of built into us, and kind of like what everyone else said, right? The why is that we have an opportunity, and facility managers are actually in a really exciting space to be able to have the opportunity to help care for and make a difference and a significant impact with people, because like everything that everyone has mentioned so far, there are so many opportunities, and I try to frame it as opportunities versus challenges, right? So many opportunities for us to make a significant difference. We know, we're at a point too where there is a significant amount of data to show what we've done previously, hasn't had the best results or the best impact, right? We know that, using, for example, conventional spray cleaners inside buildings are associated with a 40% increase in wheezing or 50% increase in asthma symptoms or medication use, right? There's a lot of data out there to support why we need to start making more changes. I know that sometimes that can feel like, oh golly, it can feel like a lot. But we know we're also in an exciting time where there are so many tools and resources and product options to make a difference. And I think that's what's super exciting about, in part, I think, maybe the pandemic spurred more of that, but and that, silver lining, but that we're in a space and time where we can start to really, and continue to, folks have been doing it for a long time, but continue to really make that impact. So I know, kind of keeping it at a high level, but I think the exciting thing for facility managers is you're really in a space to have a significant impact on the communities and the people that occupy buildings where they play a role, whether it be with, just monitoring new tools to monitor indoor air quality, tools to gauge how well is your HVAC system functioning, right? What does the ventilation look like? All of those things. And Lisa, to what you mentioned, it goes beyond the indoor environment too, and the landscaping and outside of the building, as well as pest management, right? Those are all things that influence the health of the people and the occupants, as well as the environment around the building. So I think I'll leave it at that, Jason.
Yeah, you made the comment about being keeping a high level, because like previous, we definitely could spend another couple hours talking about actually
Exactly.
days talking about the good things
Yeah.
from a cleaning perspective that we all could be using differently and monitoring and things like that. So thank you for that response. So Daniel, I'm going to send this question over to you. Same question: why should FMs prioritize sustainable systems, products, and processes in their facilities from your perspective?
Yeah. So Annie, great answer. And I would, in an effort to not, repeat a lot of the things she said, I guess my initial response is why wouldn't you, right? This is an opportunity now with real data, to make real decisions. I know our team often quotes a peer-reviewed study that was published in 2018, prior to COVID, looking at the long-term effects of using chemicals for cleaning and sanitizing. It was published in the Journal of Respiratory Medicine, and was studied over the course of 20 years, where they looked at high-risk individuals working with chemicals every day, experiencing lung degeneration rates that were equivalent to smoking a pack of cigarettes every day. So we were passionate about that study in 2018, prior to COVID, with now increased demands for clean and sanitary environments. Using dangerous product can extrapolate on that, and maybe in fear make the exposure like drinking or smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, God forbid. So from our perspective, it's just about being excited about presenting these opportunities, and I think in the long run, what is the most gratifying, when we're educating on these opportunities to take on new sustainable approaches in facilities management, is that oftentimes their jobs get a lot easier. There's less products potentially to choose from that can be either mixed improperly or used incorrectly. There are less steps or challenges associated with product procurement and availability. Team members are happier because of investments that are made in creating a healthier environment for themselves, for their coworkers, et cetera. So I think the primary response is just why wouldn't we want to make these decisions based on all of this real data that we have at our disposal now. So
Yeah, great response to that one, Daniel. And again, it's another really large topic that we could spend hours and days talking about, and I couldn't agree more about working smart and not hard.
there you
And
go.
giving us the opportunity to use the right systems and products when it comes to cleaning and the environment altogether. So thank you for that. Daryl, can you round us off on that question from an ASHRAE perspective?
I'll do my best. Well, first of all, just a little bit more background. I spent 40 years working in the higher education sector, and I started off as a designer. And in the 70s, when just reducing energy was important because of the cost of using the energy, there wasn't really that much concern about the indoor environment for the people. And I think the way that things have changed with the emphasis on people, planet, and profit, I think that we're moving the facilities management staffing from being undervalued to being strategic partners in the businesses that they're engaged with. And I think that's really good. And that allows them to start actually making recommendations and moving the needle on sustainability and indoor environment, and being part of the discussion about the people and the planet and even profits for the organization. So it's an important opportunity for the facilities management staff. They're moving from putting out fires to being actually talked to about how do we improve things for our businesses or our education system. I know before I retired from the university I worked at, there was a major focus on the student experience. So that's the sort of, are they happy? Do they value the academic experience? Do they value the experience they have in the buildings that they're in? And so the organization was coming to us saying, how do we improve that indoor environment? How do we improve lighting levels? How do we improve ventilation rates? So it's truly an opportunity. Now, that's a challenge unto itself, because there's so many things you could do, and what are you going to do, and how are you going to implement it and make sure it actually works the way it was intended. So yes, there's opportunities, and there's valuable reasons why the facilities organization should be engaged in this. There's also a big gap in them actually achieving great results. So that's kind of a high level of my view of it.
Thank you for that response, Daryl. Certainly do understand and appreciate that, as being in facility management for 27 years myself. I can definitely say that moving from theory to application is probably the most important and key concept to recall and to remember in implementing good sustainability practices in all components in the built environment. So thank you all for that. Want to pause here around that question, and Keith here in the chat section says that he's been in the public schools there in New York City for 33 years, and he believes that the standardization of those things are probably one of the most key components of success around this. From our panelists, anyone want to comment a little bit further on Keith's comment?
This is Lisa. I would jump in on that one. Yeah, I mean, I think if there's a way to standardize even simply green cleaning, like not only standardizing, I'm thinking of, Annie, I don't know if your organization ever even goes to the legislative sector and says, gosh, this should be mandatory. Why are we still using those harmful chemicals? They're really, really hurting people, I do know with our LEED rating system, we do have policies and procedures that are available to help with that standardization, to really help not just one building, but perhaps the whole school system or the whole hospital group. I'm sorry, are you guys hearing that background, or is it just me? Okay, good. So yeah, I think standardizing is key, and a way to really kind of roll things out at scale is very, very important. And maybe there is that impact on this panel. I'd be curious also who else is on the call today that has kind of that broad reach, and where else where do you have your hands? Are you guys in hospitals, schools? Where else is everybody?
Well, I can speak a little bit to standards, creating standardizing approaches. I mean, ASHRAE has been involved in creating standards for indoor environmental quality, energy efficiency for many, many years. And we actually even have a group, a standing committee of the society that's all about government interaction. Now, we don't lobby, but we do provide information and technical support to governments around the world, really. Matter of fact, I fly back to Ottawa this on Saturday, and then we're meeting with the federal government officials in Ottawa next week. And it's about presenting to them what recommendations ASHRAE is making about carbon emissions. Of course, is a focus of our government right now. So it's a lot about carbon emissions and refrigerants. But we're always promoting a standard approach to energy efficiency, indoor environmental quality, decarbonization. And then we also provide guidelines on how we believe how you can do it effectively. So we are definitely promoting standardization.
I was just going to go ahead and jump in on this too. I mean, as folks may know, a big part of what Green Seal does is, and I will speak to this a little bit more later, is develop standards for things like commercial cleaning services. And then the other thing too, Keith, which maybe you know about, is we're also a partner with the Healthy Schools campaign, with the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program that was just launched last fall, which goes a little bit beyond cleaning and is really focused on more and other products, as well as indoor air quality monitoring and all of those things that we can do, and taking that approach at the school district level. So really getting at that standardization piece. So 100% that is a key piece of what all this is about, and what the approach that Green Seal takes in order to make sure that we can take that standardized approach. And yeah, Green Seal also does not lobby. Lisa, to your question too, that's something, we try to take more of the approach of just building relationships to see how we can understand how to get it specified. That is a key piece to how we're doing, because obviously those demand drivers and having it specified in more places where it's just required is sometimes challenging for folks, but is also a key way to make it change.
Yeah, that's I think we all could probably talk for quite a bit longer on this topic of standardization. I know that IFMA definitely emulates and promotes the same key factors on that through the different credential programs, especially the SFP credential, which is the sustainability credential that does exactly the same thing. So we could stay on that topic for a little bit longer, but we've got to keep moving. So we're going to do exactly that. Keith and Megan, thank you. We are not ignoring your messages, but we're going to continue to move on. So thank you for adding that to the chat window here. And this may be a great opportunity to continue some of the virtual conversations altogether. And this is open to the audience as a whole. This next question is, what are the current challenges of implementing sustainable initiatives in facilities in general, or in specific industries, types of buildings, et cetera? So what are our challenges from it when it comes to Class A office, Class B office, hospitals, different types of office buildings? Megan had a great example there in the mushroom industry, in indoor. I can only think about the indoor air quality factor of that. From an audience perspective, share with us some of the things that you guys are challenged with currently based upon that questions. And let our panel kind of walk through responding to some of those things. So while we wait for some responses in the chat area, Raphael, if you could kind of take that question
Sure.
from a education perspective and kind of build on that. How do you work through those?
Well, I think I'm going to go back to my operating experience on this one, to be honest with you. When I got started in buildings more than 10 years ago, the biggest challenge we faced coming in with a technology data-driven solution was what I would call the traditional mindset of, we've always done it this way, set it and forget it. Essentially, I needed data to drive our machine learning models. And I had the engineer from a BMS vendor say, well, it works just fine unless you want to do an energy study or something. Well, maybe we do want to do an energy study, because maybe we need to go beyond just meeting the budget and meeting the set point and looking at energy savings, carbon emissions reductions, improved productivity, improved everything we've talked about. So I think in many respects, it's that mindset, which I would call operational, and we've set it and forget it, we've always done it this way, that sometimes can stand in the way of bigger wins, of all the kinds of things we've talked about on this call. And I think increasingly, when people challenge that mindset and bring data to bear to show that we can reach the operational goals that have always been important and sometimes exceed them, as well as these new sustainability benefits. So that traditional mindset that gets baked into set it and forget it can really hold facilities back sometimes. And I think, new approaches and using data can sort of free facility managers to go well beyond that and make much bigger contributions to the organization.
Yeah, I definitely could not agree more on that thought process, Raphael. As someone who lives in the predictive and reliability centered field of facility management, I'm constantly pushing and challenging those around me for doing exactly that. Christian, how about you? Can you share a little bit of your insight on that question?
Well, I like where Raphael went with that, because I was going to say part of the challenge is just personnel related. We see shortages, maintenance staff, schools in particular are chronically under serviced and maintained, and that makes it hard to not only keep the systems you have running, but think about all the other wonderful things that could and should be done to achieve these goals around people, planet, and profit. I was also going to mention first costs. I think some of these newer technologies at least have a perception of being more expensive, but oftentimes, particularly when one looks at things from a total life cycle cost standpoint, they're actually not always more expensive, holistically. But sometimes, oftentimes people are driven by what's in the budget, what's available, up front, and maybe have sticker shock on some of these newer technologies. But where I ended up in thinking about this question is that the biggest challenge we certainly encounter is this is how we've always done it sort of approach. And I would say, expanding on that a little bit, there's in facilities, and particularly in the engineering disciplines, there's for good reason a sort of a risk aversion also to trying new things and adopting newer technologies, and even technologies that have been around for some time like ours. The biggest challenge we have is getting people to think a little differently about how they're designing their ventilation system and how they're incorporating well-proven and vetted technologies, but ones that maybe they haven't used before. And maybe the guy down the street haven't used before, but maybe in the next state over, they've used it before. So I hear what Raphael's saying and agree that perhaps the biggest challenge we have is around change management, as opposed to figuring out better widgets or better cleaning solutions or better processes. It's thinking more imaginatively, perhaps, about what's possible.
Yeah, this is all music to my ears for sure, because I can tell you I've had the conversation more than once with the CFO. Well, what if we don't try these things? And what happens if we don't do the numbers and forecast of challenging the status quo? And sustainability is all about that. What are we doing today that will not, so that it doesn't affect the future? And I think that's something that we all, as subject matter experts, really need to continue to socialize how important it is to challenge the status quo. And Lisa, can I punt this over to you from your perspective? How would you manage and how would you respond to that question?
Yeah, I think you guys are hitting on some really important elements there about that change management, to kind of dovetail to a new area. With USGBC, we do see a lot of challenges implementing in the more sort of difficult project types, meaning the standard office building, things are kind of cookie cutter. They're easier to benchmark. They're easier to measure, perhaps more tried and true. But when you do get into situations where The occupancy is variable. Maybe it's really high occupancy, or maybe in schools in the summer you have nobody there, in the school year you have people there. So the variable building types, I think, are an area where we see challenges, not just on the occupancy side, often though it is like high occupancy. The other area where we see challenges is in the high process load types of buildings, whether it's an airport or manufacturing or hospitals. What I can say is over the years, especially since I've been here the past 10 years, we've really done a lot of work with the LEED rating system, whether it's the existing building side or the new construction side, to help with those challenges. It's never straightforward, I don't think. Even if you don't have a high process load building, or even if you don't have an unusual occupancy, you may have an unusual site. So there's usually some sort of challenge and unique situation. And we've really worked to come up with different solutions, whether it's a rating system change or addition, or helping teams with exceptional calculations. Maybe you are implementing one of those cutting edge technologies in a high process load building. We've got ways to help measure that and work with that. And we're definitely more available than we used to be. We work with a lot of different project teams to support those challenging situations. It's kind of where we're at with here.
Got it. Thank you so much for that response. Makes all sense to me. Daniel, can I get your thoughts on the challenges around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think timing always seems to be, the challenge in how people prioritize, I guess, the fires that they're responsible for putting out on a daily basis. I think, when we talk a lot about the data pertaining to, more sustainable approaches to facilities management, it's the short-term effects aren't necessarily as kind of equally felt as some of the other, larger challenges that some of these facilities managers face, like staffing and, cost, et cetera. The long-term effects of using, dangerous chemicals, for example, like aren't necessarily felt, every day. So I think, what our biggest challenge is from time to time is prioritizing and influencing, change at a pace that, can be digested within somebody's, 9 to 5, and kind of understanding that, outside of those hours, a lot of times these individuals are, living their lives, outside of work, and, these sustainable, improvements, sometimes may take, several weeks, several months, maybe even a year or two, to achieve, to set themselves up for the future, when, the toilet on the third floor is still a problem today, and the things that they're managing, certainly are occupying their most immediate time. So I think from our perspective, it's consistency, it's a commitment to education, and a commitment to an implementation of a new program that isn't necessarily going to disrupt their flow, which they've worked so hard to achieve, because they do have daily objectives that they obviously need to attain. So,
got it. Yeah, thank you for all that great input, and certainly do agree with that thought process. For the sake of time, I'm not forgetting Daryl or Annie by any means on that question, but want to go ahead and move to our fourth and final question, as we are definitely crunched on time because we have such great conversation going here, and I certainly hate to stop it, but definitely want to get to that last question. So Annie, if you can respond to this one for me initially. And again, let me remind everyone that's listening in, please put your questions in the chat window. We will do our best to respond to those at the end of this. Like any good conversation, sometimes it's really hard to stop, but definitely want to keep going so we can get this last question responded to. And Annie, how does your company and your organization help facilities reduce their environmental impact? And I want to really focus on reducing the environmental impact part of that question. And how do you help them achieve sustainable practices?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks Thanks, Jason. So the biggest component of what Green Seal does is we develop science-based standards with an emphasis on protections for people and planet. So, whether it be a product manufacturer or a service provider, those are tools. Those standards can be used as tools in the industry, just as a guide, for how to, develop a product or how best to care for a building. And we're also a partner, like I mentioned before, with Healthy Schools Campaign for the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program. So again, and that the core part of that program is a standard. So developing these standards to serve as guides for folks in the industry for what to do. Kind of feeding into some of what folks mentioned on the challenges is right knowledge and where to start is a key piece of one of the challenges. And so having these resources available, and they're all publicly available, just as a guide to where to start or how to assess where you are today. And then obviously a counterside to what Green Seal offers then is for folks that want to take the step of getting recognized and getting certified for what they are doing. That's the other kind of side of what we do, is that folks can come to us voluntarily to get their products or services or schools certified to be able to demonstrate that and ensure themselves, right? Part of it is checking, okay, am I in fact doing and meeting this standard? And so then we can provide that level of assurance that, yep, you meet all of these criteria, and then, be able to communicate that, like I mentioned before, communicating that out to the public, to the communities. Hey, this is what we've done, and this is the standard we've met, to be able to communicate all of that.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said you have to start somewhere. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that we all can encourage everyone listening in is doing nothing is irresponsible. And if you don't know how to do it, there's obviously plenty of folks on this call right now that can help you navigate those first steps. So thank you for that response, Annie. Daryl, from an ASHRAE perspective, how would you respond to that question?
Well, ASHRAE's been involved in standards, again, for a long time. I mentioned that before, and very well known in terms of the standards for energy efficiency in new buildings, and even worked with other organizations on the Green Building Standard 189.1. So we've been providing standards for new construction, but we also have standards for existing building energy efficiency, and that one now is being modified to include carbon reduction so that it becomes a building performance standard. And then there's the standards for building energy audits, which are also integrating carbon emissions into it. And then the standards for greenhouse gas emissions, which is a new standard, is currently being developed. So we don't just do standards, we do educational programs, and we also do guidelines. And right now, there's a group that's been formed within ASHRAE, a task force that's working on guidelines. We've already.
Well, I think we may have lost Daryl due to his connection. So let's go over to you, Christian, if you can respond to that from an environmental perspective of things. How would you respond to that?
Sure. So Inverid Systems is a company that has developed an air clean technology that we use to make ventilating buildings more energy efficient. As we talked about before, I think the main reason we ventilate buildings is to ensure, according to ASHRAE at least, acceptable indoor air quality. If we're looking for a LEED rating or a WELL rating, we might want to go beyond sort of the minimum standard. But the primary reason we ventilate buildings is to ensure acceptable or better indoor air quality. So the question then is, what are the common indoor air pollutants that we're worried about? And it's particles, things like dust and pollen and smoke. It's pathogens, of course. With the pandemic, everybody zeroed in on the importance of controlling the transmission of these airborne pathogens. But it's also gases, things like ozone that comes from outside buildings typically, and things from indoors, like formaldehyde and other VOCs that can come from cleaning supplies or paints or furnitures, glues, adhesives, these sort of things. And so today, what buildings typically do is they try to control the levels of those contaminants by diluting them with outside air. That's the ventilation, component that we've been referring to. The challenge with this traditional approach to just using dilution ventilation, as it's called, to control those contaminant levels is that when we have to condition lots of outside air And anytime it's hot and humid in the summertime or cold in the winter, a lot of energy is used to move that air and to heat or cool or dehumidify that air. And so getting back to what Envera does, we have a system. We've developed an air cleaning technology, it's a sorbent media-based technology that very efficiently removes those gases, the ozone, the formaldehyde, and the other VOCs from the air so that we can deliver ASHRAE defined or better indoor air quality targets without having to be as reliant on outside air ventilation, and therefore without having to condition as much outside air, without having to upsize mechanical systems so significantly to treat so much outside air. And so that's what we focus on. It's this air cleaning to allow us to safely clean and recycle indoor air using a sorbent media-based technology. The benefits are the same or better air quality versus the traditional dilution ventilation approach, more energy efficiently, less capital cost on new systems. And by the way, when the outside air isn't so fresh, when it's polluted, it also makes the building more resilient to these outdoor generated contaminants. So this is what we offer. We do it in existing buildings as a retrofit. We do it in new buildings, and I'd be happy to speak with anybody who wants to learn more about that.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that response. Daryl, was there anything else that you wanted to wrap up on your response with how environmental impacts are affecting us now in facility management? Maybe? Well, let's go over to Raphael. I have actually a little different version of that question for you, Raphael. And it goes back to how is it that you're working with your students, and how is it that the decision makers of the next generation, can you share any relevant insights from your recent students or the courses that you've taught, regardless, and relative to how it's reducing the environmental impact and how to achieve those sustainable practices?
Well, actually, that's a little bit different than what I was kind of asked to prepare to answer. So let me maybe shift gears. And it is
Sure.
based somewhat on my teaching as well.
Sure.
So I want to link it back to educational opportunities. But what I was asked to really speak about was really the skill set for the next generation of facility managers, some of whom I may be teaching right now.
Sure.
And I'd like to make a few points here. And this is based on both my academic and my operating experience. First is the next generation must be conversant in software, Internet of Things, networking, just for starters, to manage a modern building. That's becoming table stakes. It's not just how to run a BMS and set a set point. Second is broadening the skill set, and this is what I teach about as well, to understand sustainability practices more broadly than just the mechanicals of the building. And all of my co-panelists have spoken to this because it's gone well beyond just HVAC. It's lighting, it's cleaning, it's many of the things we've talked about. So sustainability practices, I just did a guest lecture last week in the sustainability class. I looked throughout the entire value chain and the supply chain and the distribution channels and to the point of customer use, and look at all of those opportunities. And that's, bringing it in, facilities is a huge amount of that. Facilities for the operation, facilities for distribution, et cetera. A third thing, and this is something which is a personal passion of mine because I've been in computer industry for a long time, is this is really the digital transformation of facilities management. There needs to be developed competencies in data analysis and data science. This is the most neglected area. When I was doing smart buildings, very oftentimes the data that was retained was either dirty or not as extensive as thought. And the data is the foundation for almost everything we've talked about. Christian called it control, other people's, we've all talked about control and monitoring. It's based on the data you're working from. So having that data science and data analysis, the next thing is AI and machine learning. Increasingly, we're applying these technologies for predictive modeling. Many of my panelists have spoke to. Another area, I spent some time in cybersecurity 20 years ago as a CMO and a product head for an early cyber company. 20 years ago, the building wasn't a point of entry. Now, the facilities become a new point of entry to the enterprise. So we're not just looking at operating this building, but protecting it. And then the last thing is really taking the skill set beyond an operational focus to, as everybody has mentioned, more of a business focus and health and all of these things. So I think really the skill set for the next generation facility manager sort of builds on the foundation of what they've already done, but enlarges it in all of these ways. And at NYU, whether it's our business school with our professional, school for real estate, or the business school for sustainability, or Tandon engineering, we do have each of those disciplines covered in our curriculum. But I think the next generation is going to be a much more technologically advanced facility manager.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with any of that. So thank you so much for that. Technology will definitely be the next generation. So we're getting close on time. So I want to give Daniel the opportunity to respond as well. So if I could ask you guys just to keep your responses to about a minute and a half at the most, so we all can get everyone in here together. So Daniel, if you can respond, how is your organization helping environmental impacts and the sustainability practices?
Our mission is very simple. It's to remove toxic chemicals from the environment. And we build a proprietary technology that, when installed inside of a facility of, really any type of, diversity, healthcare, education, food packaging, food processing. This machine that we've developed will in a very proprietary way mix water, salt, and electricity together to create two very powerful solutions that are also non-toxic. And our goal is to implement our technology to rid a facility of existing products that could cause harm to not just the user but to the environment, and to promote an ultimately sustainable approach to on-site generation, of our solutions, so that facilities no longer have to order, purchase, store, or more importantly, use these dangerous chemicals throughout their environment. So if anybody would like to learn more about what we do, our company is called Viking Pure Solutions, and we have a tremendous amount of resources, electronically, that you can research and see how our product can improve your day-to-day.
Thank you, sir. I certainly will emulate the dangerous chemical point of what you were saying. I don't think anybody wants to have any of those items in their buildings in any capacity. So thanks for bringing that up. Lisa, from the USGBC side of things, can you help us understand how they are helping reduce the environmental impact, and how can we achieve those sustainable goals?
Yeah, I really think the how here at USGBC for the past 30 years, we've been helping transform the market, the way we build our buildings, the way we operate our buildings. Year over year, there's always something new we're looking to push, whether, it was green cleaning, green construction. Now it's electrification and decarbonization. And so we're constantly looking to raise the bar, which is not easy, because you raise it too high, you lose the market. So there's always a balance there. I think the most important how we are doing today is through our current version of the LEED rating system for operations and maintenance. It's performance-based. This is critical. It's my most important message today, which is we are, as Raphael talked about, using the data. What is the data coming out of your building? How are you performing? We have scores now where you're able to see, what's my water score? What's my energy and atmosphere and carbon score? What is my indoor air quality score? That allows you to get on the scale, so to speak, or get your blood work or your blood pressure taken quickly. If you are a high performing building, because you're already implementing these things, the LEED rating system will reward you. If you're not, we have the tools to help you get there. That allows you to focus on what you need to focus on. So in addition to our performance driven rating system, which is really a smart way that is data driven, we continue to evolve the market. And again, that's even resilience and equity and ESG. So there's a lot of really powerful things in the how happening at USGBC. And I'm grateful to be here to talk about it today.
We appreciate you being here with us as well, Lisa. Thank you so much. Annie, if you can wrap it up for us on that conversation and that question, what would you like to share?
I think I started us off, but happy to happy to add a little bit more. But I'll just feed off lastly what Lisa mentioned in terms of Green Seal outside of the standards and certification that I already mentioned. Like Lisa mentioned, the challenge always is not setting the bar too high. Green Seal's mission is also to transform the economy so that we've got, products and services out there that are better for people on the planet. But you can't set the bar too high because, like Lisa said, you lose the market. So it's always this delicate balancing act of making sure you set it so it's attainable, but still leadership to help move folks in the right direction. And that's what we're doing here at Green Seal.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. So we're almost out of time, but wanted to make sure that we say it out loud that you obviously, if you're part of the discussion today, please reach out to these individuals outside of this conversation if you need some additional resources and assistance with that. Obviously IFMA is a huge advocate for facility management. That's exactly why we exist. And we've got plenty of opportunities on ifma.com to learn more about best practices in the built environment altogether. Certainly rely on me for that resource as well. With that, thank you all very much from our panelist perspective for being with us here today. Truly appreciated your time and attention and all the great conversation. And I know we all could speak for hours and days on our specific areas that we're here for today. So from me to you, thank you so much for your time. Norel, back to you.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add to that, but I do want to thank each of you guys, Jason, Annie, Lisa, Christian, Raphael, Dan, and Daryl for joining us today on this panel. Great conversation. I certainly enjoyed it and learned a lot, and I'm sure our attendees did as well. Everyone who has attended the panel today will be able to access the recording via the same link that you used to register. So feel free to go back and rewatch. And again, thank you all very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.